Welcome back to another action-packed episode of Pig's Ear in Review. We're here with Riku Rose. How's it going today?
Good, man. You?
Oh, not too bad. Can't complain. Nice sunny day today, finally. And I'm Myshtuff, as always. So before we go into talking about what we're going to be doing today, make sure to like and comment and subscribe here on the YouTube channel or on Twitter. And then one of these days, I will come back and start streaming on Twitch again. I know it's been a little while, but I'm still thinking of games I might want to play in there.
Just wait for the hot tub to be delivered, yeah?
Yeah. It's going to go right behind me right over there. I got the green screen coming up. Yeah, I'm getting a whole setup here. Don't worry. But on today's Pig's Ear in Review at the Tojo Dojo, we're going to be talking about Final Fantasy XIV, A Realm Reborn, the Batman movie, and a recent special about Norm Macdonald called Norm Macdonald Nothing Special. So great name, which we'll get into. I don't know how many Norm Macdonald fans we have out there, but it was an interesting one.
There are many of us.
All 2 or 3 of us potentially. So let's just get right into it then. We'll turn it over to you to talk about a game you've been playing.
Yeah, a Final Fantasy XIV, A Realm Reborn. So huge Final Fantasy fan, as you know.
See the t-shirt?
Yeah, MMOs not typically my style.
Yeah,
I would say this is the first MMO I've really played.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't know about you, but like back in the day, I think everyone at least tried RuneScape.
Funny enough, RuneScape, I'm familiar with it, but it's one of the few of those style games that I actually have not played. Funny enough.
Oh, really? I think I probably played for it for a collective hour.
Sure. Yeah.
Like back when I was at high school. Final Fantasy XI, I never played because I'm not a big multiplayer guy.
Sure.
I like playing with people I know. I don't like playing with strangers. So an MMO never seemed like a good idea. And Final Fantasy XI always seemed cool to me because it was like, let's build a big party and go on adventures. And I'm like, yeah, that sounds cool, but I don't know like 4 other people that are playing this.
Yeah. I mean, and then did you try, other than RuneScape, I guess, and Final Fantasy, did you ever try any other MMOs or no?
No, I don't think I ever have. But this was my third time trying it. First time I played for like an hour, went there. Second time I played for a few hours.
Okay.
And I was like, it's not clicking with me. I don't feel it. But then apparently about a year back, what they did was they cut a lot of the fetch quests out of the beginning. Because a big thing people say, and it becomes a bit of a meme, is like, it takes a while to get going. But once the story gets going, like, wheels are rolling, you're in, right?
And then those first 2 times you tried it, was it also when it was that Realm Reborn, or was before that?
No, it was. I never played like the original one that they like nuked out of existence.
Yeah, which, to be honest, I mean, I guess I don't know. Are you familiar with that story of like what happened or like how that came to be? Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, I would just be curious. It's funny.
It is played into the story of this MMO because they talk about the calamity.
Yeah.
Right, which is when like a big meteor hit the earth. So the story from the original game happened, but you can't play it anymore. Right. So they're like, oh yeah, like this event happened years ago, and they're all like, we don't really know what happened. Like people's memories have been wiped, but those characters are still there, and they're like, something happened. We're really grateful. Like this happened, and like the story spins off from there, sort of thing.
That's so funny, and I don't know, even fewer people than the Norm Macdonald fans might remember an anime I'm about to mention here, but there's one of my favorite animes back in the day. It's called Big O. Great name, too, by the way. It starts with an amnesia, like, sort of event that happened where, like, no one can remember everything, but, like, society still kind of keeps going on, and it is sort of, like, built into the story. Yeah, it's one of my favorite animes. It just, I don't know, it just reminded me of that as well. I find it funny when those types of things happen. Anyways, go ahead.
Yeah, no, so the story in A Realm Reborn is pretty basic. Okay. I am playing one of the expansions now, but I won't go into that too much because I think that's something I could talk about separately another time.
Okay.
but it is pretty much good versus evil, and it's not even like a great story by like Final Fantasy standards.
Okay.
It's very basic and it's there, but
Mhm.
I more than the story itself, I do like the world.
Okay.
When they talk about like the politics of the world and stuff, they talk about like a town that's like really rich and like the poor people in it, and apparently
Hmm.
there's like camps of refugees just living outside the city
Oh God.
walls. But how most games would be like, we just need to help these people,
Hmm.
right? This actually like talks about like we can't just help them all. We don't have the resources for it.
Hmm.
Plus, then all the other refugees from everywhere else would come here looking for help. Like it's not as simple as we can just help these people. And I kind of
Okay.
like that where not everything's black and white. And over the
Yeah.
course of the game, like all the kingdoms build up and you start to get a feel for right, this is what's going on in this kingdom, that's what's going on in this kingdom.
Hmm. Sure.
Yeah. What I do find weird though is when you turn up to places and they're like, "You're the warrior of light. You're the only person who can help us." And my
Hmm.
character just nods because he doesn't say anything because it's an MMO, right? And then it cuts back to like the open world because the cutscene's over, and there's
Hmm.
like a guy in massive like gold armor called MILF Hunter 69, and then there's like me who's level 2, just like looking at him, and I'm like, "Oh, so I'm the savior, not this guy."
Yeah, and I'm the only one.
Yeah, I'm the only one who can help us. Not the guy who's flying around on a fire-breathing dragon.
So that's interesting because, like, I feel like that is always the not I shouldn't say downfall, but like the suspension of disbelief with these types of MMOs, and I feel like this happens in almost every MMO, and it's like whatever, it's a game, I get it, but that I feel like that's pretty common in most of
That is the worst thing as well. Is like it. This game kind of got made into an MMO where I really feel like the story and the world would have been better fleshed out if it was just a game that was like either a linear and open world RPG.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like I've even heard people say, especially with I think the update you mentioned maybe a year or so ago, like a lot of people just play this game by themselves now. Like they don't
Yeah,
even have parties. Like I don't know, is that how you're playing, or
yeah,
are
yeah,
you playing
yeah.
with others? Okay,
I probably spoke to people twice or three times,
okay,
and that's it. I was in the beginning town, and someone ran up to me and just gave me 100,000 gil,
nice. All
and they
right.
were like, "I just really want you to enjoy this game like I do," and ran off.
I mean,
And I was
that's
like,
awesome.
"Yeah," I was like, "Thank you, okay." Like, that's polite. That's nice.
Wait, is this a trick? Is this a quest that's going to come back to haunt me in like a couple
Well,
months?
I was walking down an alley, and they said, "Remember when I helped you out?"
Yeah.
And
All right. It's time to pay back.
unzip the pants. Um, I'd rather not talk about that though. I'd rather focus on the
Yeah,
game.
that's the next
Uh,
expansion. That's all right.
yeah,
Fair enough.
but no. So that and like there was like just random times where like I walked away from like the controller and I came back and someone's like dancing at me in a town somewhere.
Classic
Um,
MMO.
yeah, I'm like, okay, nice to meet you too, Milf Hunter
Uh,
69.
great.
Yeah, but that is also the thing. Is like the only time you're really forced to play with people is when you go in the dungeons, right? There's
Hmm.
times in the story where they're like, "Oh, you've got to go in these mines because like there's a dragon down there that's like killing people, right?"
Hmm.
And you're like, "Okay," so you start just go right. I want to do the dungeon, and it pairs you with people in the roles that you need. So it'd be like, "Oh, you need a tank, a white mage, a black
Hmm.
mage, whatever, right?
Yeah.
Support class, right?"
Well, sorry to be clear. Like it's mandatory. Like you have to, or
Yeah. So in the earlier stuff now, you can actually play with NPCs.
oh, okay, okay.
Right, but that's only for like a Realm Reborn. All the expansions, they haven't rolled that out yet. So in those, you still have to play with like real people, but it
Okay.
does pair you up with people you need.
Okay. Okay.
Right, so they're the only time you're forced to play with people.
Hmm.
But there are the odd ones. Like I did a dungeon a couple of nights ago where it was just very story based, and I literally played with two NPCs,
Hmm.
and I was like, I prefer this so much because when you're playing with people, you're always worried like you're holding because it is pretty linear. The dungeon, you just go, and there's the odd
Hmm.
shoot off where you're like, oh, maybe there's a chest down there, but the other three people in your party just run the other way, and you're like, well, I
God
don't
damn
want
it.
to be the person who holds them up.
Yeah.
So then you like go with them and stuff. Whereas when I was playing the ones with the NPCs, I was like, oh, okay, I'll go down here, see if anything's down here. This would be cool. Take your time or whatever.
But do you control those NPCs or no? They're on their
No,
own.
they just like follow you, like
Oh, okay.
like a normal RPG, you know.
Yeah. Okay.
But that's it. Is I feel that holds it back from my enjoyment because I'm more worried about like, oh, am I doing the right thing? And I don't know if I'm just being polite. I don't want to ruin it for other people.
You're just too nice.
Yeah,
Got to be assertive.
Because I'm a tank, so I take all the damage
Okay.
and stuff, right? And like you have to do something called tank stance, which makes all the enemies come after you.
Okay.
And there's been like 2 or 3 times where I've done a dungeon, I forgot to put that on, and people are like, "Hey Riku, can you put on the tank stance, please?" I'm like, "Whoops, sorry." Sure. Yeah. Like everyone's polite about it and stuff, but I just would have preferred it if throughout the entire game you didn't. Like I would actually like really enjoy the dungeons if it was with people I knew.
Yeah.
And we could like rib each other a bit and stuff like that. But when you're just
well,
playing with
I mean well, that's the thing, and I think that's why people do enjoy MMOs. Is like if you have a good group, similar to like if you were to play D&D or something like that. I think a lot of people do enjoy that dynamic if you can get a good group as opposed to like completely random strangers. So I can understand.
I mean, I know people play. You hear stories like people got married in the game and like
You're
stuff
right.
like that, right? And I think what's weird is I don't really see, and I'm sure people will tell me I'm wrong and I'm an idiot for thinking this, but I don't really see where you can build a community in this outside of running up to random people and saying hello.
Okay.
Which I'm not that kind of person. I'm not just going to run up to people and say hello.
Sure.
And I've got no interest in doing that. So I do pretty much just play this game on my own. I don't interact with other people.
Yeah.
And for the most part, I run past other people in the open world or in the towns, and they're just part of the scenery. Which also, as well, because the only thing you can do with people is the dungeons, it's not like I can say to you, hey, let's play this together. Because we'd be doing the main story like separately, and like when you get in the cutscenes, it would just be your character.
Oh, yeah, I didn't even think about that. Yeah.
Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like a co-op game either, because me and you would both have to go do the main quests, but separately.
Yeah, I mean, it's a game that just, well, it's weird because even though it's become more single-player friendly, it's still created as a game as you're the only person almost, and in the cutscenes or whatever, it sounds like don't adjust, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, like if you ever went, oh, I want to play Final Fantasy 14, I could be like, great, let me know when you're going to do a dungeon, and I'll jump into it with you. Right, but it's not like we're going to be exploring this world together. Like me and you once looked at playing Final Fantasy 11, and that literally seemed like something where me and you could do the whole story together. And that's a very old school MMO, and that was kind of I've read into it, and that was kind of where MMOs sort of fell down. Because I'm sure you remember, like the mid 2000s, like MMOs were really popular. Everyone was making them.
Yeah, so I actually played a couple of them. So like I played World of Warcraft for a little bit, and then funny enough, I actually played Star Wars Galaxies for a little bit back in the day. And to be honest, I'm kind of the same as you. MMOs just in general aren't my thing, but that was like peak that time to try those types of games, and I was like, all right, I'll give them a shot. And I did have fun with them, and I even did play with a couple of people I knew, but like I it's almost too much to do, and like I can't. Those games I don't think had as linear of a story either, so it was just like stuff, and then obviously there's expansions, and I'm like, all right, this is too much for me. Like, I'm good.
Yes, but then they had that sort of MMOs had that period in like the early 10s where they sort of weren't popular anymore.
Yeah.
And then like I think it's with like Final Fantasy 14, it's sort of come back, right?
Yeah, 14 has become like massive for people. Like even people who don't typically play MMOs, I've heard people play this game now. So,
but what I've read is the issue was with those old games was they were so team based, and everyone who had played them had been playing them, so no one new could get into them because like all the starting areas there was no one to play with; they were all deserted, and everyone was all at the end game content, right? Whereas this, now the way they've got people into this, and I'm still getting people into it, is just make it single player focused, which
Sure.
then kind of takes away the main aspect of what I think of with an MMO.
Right. And the fact that like you have to keep paying monthly for this too, right?
Yeah, I mean, everything I've played is free.
Oh, okay.
So the first game and the first expansion are free.
Okay, I didn't realize
So
that.
in theory, you could download it a day and not pay a penny until you get to the second expansion.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's good.
So like that's one of those things where I'm like, if it slightly interests you, I'd say like check it out still and stuff like that. Don't let the fact it's an MMO be something that just deters you away, because at least you're not having to pay $60 for the game and then $15 for the like month or whatever. You know, it's a
And
low
how many
entry.
expansions are there? Do you know?
4.
Okay, and I mean, it sounds like they're pretty sizable, like a lot of
Yeah,
content,
I
I'm
mean,
guessing.
the first game probably around Reborn probably took me about 30 hours,
Hmm.
which decent sized RPG, and I
Yeah.
did some side stuff here and there.
Okay.
Like this is a thing as well. Is like I'm very much in it for the story.
Yeah.
Um, so I pretty much beeline to the story, and
Hmm.
I've not been punished in any way for that. I've not been under leveled. I've not been like
Okay.
feeling like, oh, everyone's doing so much better than me. But if I
Hmm.
wanted to just become a carpenter and like make my house look funky, I could go and do that.
Sure.
That
Okay.
option is there. I could go
Okay.
fishing for 10 hours.
Hey, if that's your thing, go for it.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of because I've not explored that side of it too much.
Hmm.
Maybe I don't get it as much as people.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on what you want to get out of a game too, because like for example, Animal Crossing is a game that I can never get into, but I know
Yeah,
people like it because they can go back into it on any day. It's there. They can spend an hour, do whatever they want, and
yeah.
then
I need
hop
something
back
to propel
out.
me forward.
Yeah, exactly. Like yes, I have those games that I can, like for example, a game I can do that with is Doom, like the older Doom games. Like
Hmm.
I can hop in, play for 30 minutes on just a random level, have a good time, and hop out. I know that's not everyone's cup of tea necessarily, but like there are games that are more like comfort games, like you can just go into. It seems like stuff like that for these MMOs could be kind of like that, where you just want to go in, not think about things too much, and hop out, which I can understand too, I guess.
Honestly, like I still think it's one of those things where, like, if you ever played it,
Hmm.
I would for sure be like, oh yeah, I'll do the dungeons with you and stuff like that. And I think
Hmm.
that would make me sort of go like, I like see the game maybe in a new light in a way. Like,
Hmm.
oh, this is fun, because at the moment I kind of dread the dungeons because I'm like, I'm just playing with random people I don't know, and I
Hmm.
just want to do the story. Why do I have to do this part with people?
Yeah.
You know,
Well, I
and
mean, shit. All right. Since you said it's free, maybe I'll check it out for a little bit. I
yeah,
wouldn't
well,
mind doing that. All
yeah,
right.
yeah,
All
yeah.
right.
But and it's kind of made me also eventually want to go back and check out Final Fantasy 11, the MMO that's
Hmm.
still alive 20 years later.
Well, yeah, fan servers are crazy, and I mean, not just for 11,
Oh,
but
it's got
like
official servers still going.
I thought
Yeah,
it was
yeah,
only
they had
fan
like a
servers.
stream where they announced new story stuff for the 20th anniversary.
Oh, I didn't realize that. Okay,
Yeah,
shit. All
but
right.
that one is more a let's build a team and go on an adventure game, and that sounds
Yeah.
more epic to me and
Hmm.
something like I think I would enjoy more. I've heard the stories maybe not as good in that.
Hmm.
It's a bit more
Sure.
like Dungeons and Dragons basic.
Sure.
But yeah, that's something it's made me not be as against MMOs as I used to be.
Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, I'm enjoying it. I'd give it a thumbs up. I'm
Hmm.
now at the point where people say it gets really good.
Yeah.
Um, so we'll see.
Okay.
I'll keep going.
How would you rank it amongst other Final Fantasy games, or is it just too different to be able to do
I
that?
think it is too different. I think like the story from A Realm Reborn is pretty basic. I don't think it's anywhere near as good as like the PS1 Final Fantasy stories. Because to me, like Final Fantasy like 4 to 12 are
Hmm.
like the golden era, right? Like,
Okay.
and I don't think the story in this beats any of those stories.
Okay.
But
Okay.
it's not as like basic as like Final Fantasy 1 and 3 are,
Hmm.
where it's very much good versus evil, similar to what
Yeah.
this is. But I like the world building in this.
Okay.
more than the
Nice.
story.
Nice. Okay. Well, that's good to hear then. Cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. All
I'll
right.
give it a
Well,
thumbs up.
maybe I'll check it out. Since we're talking about MMOs really quick, and I mentioned Star Wars Galaxies, I'm going to regale you with a funny story from my MMO days. So back in Star Wars Galaxies, and it's funny because they actually have a different MMO now, the Old Republic, which I've never tried. But Galaxies was technically that first MMO that they did. And so back in the day, they used to have events where like characters from the movies would come in certain locations. So like one day I was on Tatooine on my land speeder hanging out, and I go to Mos Eisley, to check out the cantina, and they had this event where Darth Vader is there, like an NPC. Well, I
Drinking in
think
the corner.
well, that would be funny too. But I think it was someone actually controlling him, like on the company side. But it was essentially like an NPC character, and you could interact with him and stuff. And I like didn't. I'm just an idiot, I guess. I didn't realize like certain things would happen if you did things to him. So I went up to him and I started attacking him. Like I like shot at him, and I'm not kidding when I say he flung me halfway across Tatooine to the other side of the planet, like in retaliation, and I died instantly.
I would have been like,
And
"Oi, you Humpty Dumpty looking twat!"
you fuck, take the helmet off and fight me one on one, you piece of shit. But it was so funny because everyone was talking to him, and everyone was excited. And I'm the idiot who I just attacked him, and he flung me halfway across the fucking planet.
I mean,
See that was fun.
Final Fantasy XIV's had events like that where like characters from the main games come in for limited times and stuff and do
Really?
events and stuff. It is a
Yeah.
really good love letter as well to just the Final Fantasy series, and it's really good about like fan servicey type things as well.
Yeah. So that's funny. I love it when stuff like that happens. I just had a good time. So yeah, that's cool. That's good.
All right.
All right. We're gonna talk about now the Batman.
You watched this opening night, I understand.
Yeah, I was gonna say, okay, so we're mid-July right now. This movie's been out since like late February, something like that, I think, or maybe early March, roughly.
And it was that long, you've only just finished it.
Yeah, that's how long the movie is, guys. It's literally taken me this long. That really leads me into I mean, not to start off on a negative foot, but the reason why it's taken this long for me to watch it is because it's fucking 3 hours. So, um, I guess I don't think. Well, we've talked about this before. Like, movies don't need to be this long. And even though I can't say I didn't have like a bad time watching this or anything like that, like, I don't think it necessarily dragged on completely, but it absolutely did not need to be 3 fucking hours long.
I think there's like 4 or 5 different points where nothing's being said or done. It's just the Batman walking to like orchestra music for like 5 minutes.
Yes, and to be fair, I'm all for like setting a scene and ambiance and all that. I completely understand that, but when it's stretched out so long and it just becomes like, all right, like maybe you do it the first time and then for the times after maybe shorten it a little bit. But yeah, they definitely do that a couple times in this movie. So without other than the negative aspect, I guess to start out with, yeah, I really enjoyed it. I mean, I will say I think it's pretty obvious DC movies are like just scrambling to have anything be successful at this point with anything from the last few years, and this one is, I think, right, it was a good choice to sort of separate from like the share. I don't know, do they have a name for their shared universe or whatever?
DCEU?
Oh, like extended universe or
Expanded
something.
universe, something like that.
Yeah, so it's obviously trying to do what Marvel's doing, but very late to the game and doing it very poorly. But so this is completely separate from all of that. I mean, at least for now. I mean, granted, who knows with that Flash movie, if it ever comes out, maybe we'll throw this into it too.
Ezra Miller will throw it across the room, probably.
Yeah, exactly. So this is a separate thing, and the premise of this is he's young, young Bruce and Batman. He's sort of just starting out with his Batman career, I guess you could call it, his job. I think technically in the movie they say it's his second year of doing it. So for those of you, so like for me, I mean, I've loved Batman pretty much my whole life, and I on my shelf over here, I have a couple of shelves worth of different Batman graphic novels, and like that's the thing with Batman is I think it's like with a lot of different properties, the comics are phenomenal. I mean, there's some shitty ones too, of course, and there's good Batman movies as well, but like there's some incredible stories for Batman in the comics, and at least from my understanding, from my knowledge of Batman, this seems to be taking things from a couple of different comics. So the first one is one called Batman Year One,
Mm-hmm.
which is, as the name implies, he's just getting started. So like he doesn't have things quite figured out yet. He's a little bit more gritty, emotional. He's not like calm and collected. And then the other one, which actually happens to be my favorite Batman comic of all time, which is called Batman: The Long Halloween.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually have like a super nice fancy collection. I probably should have brought it over, but you can look it up online. But it's this really nice collection. And actually Christopher Nolan said that's one of the inspirations he used for his trilogy was that one. And I can tell that for this, there were aspects also pulled from that as well. So if you're wanting some really good Batman comics, I'd recommend Year One and Long Halloween. But it seems like that's where they took inspiration from, and bits and pieces from others, I'm sure as well. But really, this movie is a film noir, gritty type of movie, but then also oddly mixed with like Saw a little bit in the beginning. Like,
Yeah. Honestly, I felt like this was more a Gotham movie than a Batman movie.
yeah, I think that's a good point. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it does a better job of setting the world, setting the town, setting
Yeah,
the aspect of how it feels to live there, the hopelessness, the grittiness.
yeah,
Then this is Batman and this is what he does. Because I came
right.
away from this movie not really knowing much about this version of Bruce Wayne other than the fact he's sad and angry.
Emo Batman. Yeah.
Yeah, but whereas I came away from this feeling like Gotham was a more real place than, say, even in the Nolan
Mm-hmm.
trilogy.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. Exactly. They really flesh out the world. And at first I was worried because there's multiple villains in this, and I thought they were trying to shoehorn too much, but
Mm-hmm.
I think they struck a good
Yeah,
balance
yeah,
from what I could tell. And then Paul Dano as the Riddler, I think he did a really good job. I mean, the thing is, like, you watch Jim Carrey from the 90s playing the Riddler, and you're like, okay, I guess the Riddler's just fucking Jim Carrey. Like, how do you do Jim Carrey?
mm-hmm.
But I think rightfully so. They took a very, very different um, approach for it, and I think he did a great job. And there's a little bit of like modern social media aspect to his
Yeah.
villainy a little bit, which I thought was interesting. But
I think in this modern day, that's kind of how you've got to take that character, though,
yeah,
because like you've got to make him somewhat Zodiac killery.
yeah, exactly.
Because like if he was like the Jim Carrey kind of in the modern day today, you'd just have people making fun of him online.
Yeah. Exactly,
Yeah,
exactly. Colin Farrell as the Penguin, man, that makeup job is
yeah,
insane. Like I cannot, like, even like it's him, but then you
yeah.
look at him and you're like, what? Like it
You
just looks
just you
insane.
don't see him under it.
Yeah. So a phenomenal job, and I think he did a great job as the
Hmm.
Penguin as well. And then you got other people like Falcone or Falcone, I think technically, however you pronounce it.
I wasn't as big a fan as him. I love John. Is it John Turturro?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah, normally love him in everything he's in,
Hmm.
and I just kind of thought he fell a bit flat. Like he was trying too hard to be a tough guy when he's like very lanky looking.
Yeah,
Because like
exactly. I
most
mean,
like mob bosses, like Tony Soprano, for instance, you look at him and you think, oh yeah, back in the day, I can imagine he'd beat the shit out of anyone.
yeah, exactly. So that's fair. That's fair too. Um, I won't say anything else about anyone else well, Catwoman, of course,
Mm.
appears
She
as
was good.
well.
She was good.
Yeah, yeah, I enjoyed her as well. I guess I will say though, okay, I guess I'm gonna try my best not to spoil the ending, but like, yes, it's known that like Batman and Catwoman have a back and forth relationship and all that stuff, but I feel like in this movie I don't know if they just didn't explore it as much, or like the ending scene where they may or may not see each other. I feel like it was maybe not as earned as it could have been. I don't know. Maybe
Yeah,
I guess
I
this
think
is one
that
where I feel yeah,
I think that the problem with that yet again is Batman in this story is
yeah,
because you never really have a feel for him as a character, and if you want a relationship to build in a movie or a story, you need to know both people.
yeah, exactly.
Whereas they
Yeah,
explore
that's it.
Catwoman better than they do Batman.
Yeah, that's a good point. So, but yeah, her as Catwoman, yeah, I thought she did a great job. Andy Serkis as Alfred, I thought he was fine as well. good reasonable.
Again, he was just kind of there for me. I felt like all the villains in
Yeah.
that were like fleshed out so well, but
Hmm.
Batman and Alfred, like, they didn't even seem to get on in this movie.
Well, and so that's the thing. It's funny you'd say that because I knew what I was getting into watching this movie with it being more of the earlier in his career. But like I watched it with my wife, and her first thing after we finished it was like, this is not really like she very much knows Batman too. She's read a bunch of the comics, seen all the movies and all that sort of stuff. But she was like, yeah, this really isn't quite the Batman that we kind of know. And I'm like, yeah, but that's kind of the point.
Yeah,
But then again, if it's not obvious, I'm not saying you should or shouldn't know that, but I guess that's once again that is what they're going for. Is it's earlier in his career, and like I think the quote that stuck out to me at some point in the movie is, which I think solidified that. If I'm probably going to butcher this, but he basically said, "I knew I always had an inspiration on, or sorry, I always knew I had an effect on this city, but now I know it was the wrong effect." Because he's still learning, he's more fearful as opposed to like inspirational, and that's where like, okay, if that's what they're going for, I can't blame them too much for like Alfred and Batman being buddy buddy by this point. They're more like confrontational, so that's where like I have to kind of keep that in mind personally, at least.
I mean, I don't want them to remake the Nolan trilogy because
Right.
what's the point, right? You might as well do
Yeah.
something new. But something the
Mhm.
Nolan trilogy did really well, I thought, was exploring the Bruce Wayne side of the character
Mhm. Mhm.
and even just his relationship with people outside of the suit, right?
Mhm.
Him and Alfred, that's like the great. Him and Michael Caine play off each other so well.
E- exactly.
They've got that
Yes.
friend but father figure relationship, and you just believe it.
But do you think they had that going right at Batman Begins?
I remember in Batman Begins, like they show like Alfred looking after him when he's a kid, and then it's like when he
Mhm.
comes back, straight away they're like playing off each other.
Yeah, I guess that's fair. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Whereas that, I never got there was any sort of real history here. Alfred was more like, "Oh, fucking dad left me with you, you little shit." Like,
I mean, Bruce basically tells him to fuck off like a couple
yeah,
of times.
yeah. Like Robert Pattinson, I think he was good in the Batman suit. I
Hmm.
don't know if he was a good Bruce Wayne
Yeah, I
because
can understand that.
anytime he was Bruce Wayne, he just like did like his all like sad face. He was like, oh. Like just
Hmm.
everywhere he went,
Yeah,
he was. When there's a part where he goes, I don't want to spoil it. He goes somewhere as Bruce Wayne, right? He's like, I've got to go there
yeah,
as Bruce Wayne. But he pretty much runs into everyone he's ran into as Batman at that part in the movie, right?
yeah.
But he stares and looks at them the exact same way Batman does. And I'm like, how is no one like, is that motherfucking Batman?
It's like the Superman Clark Kent problem. He just puts
Yeah.
on the glasses. Oh, it's you can't tell it's me
But I'm
now.
like the fucking weird goth kid over there. That might be Batman. He's got the means to it.
Yeah,
And I know everyone
exactly.
always rips on like how does no one know, but like I don't
Like,
get
come on.
I don't get why he had to be Bruce Wayne there because all he did was turn up and stare a bit.
Yeah, yeah,
Normally when
exactly.
he's like Christian Bale would like turn up and like pretend to get drunk at a party and start
With
talking to
like five
people.
women on his arms, like yeah,
Yeah, yeah, but like he like we make fun of that, but that was to break down the defenses of other people so he could learn more.
yes,
You
exactly.
know,
But once again, this is not that Batman. So that's my defense. I have
then
to
what's
keep
the
using.
point
And
of Bruce Wayne in this though?
oh, right, no,
Yeah,
exactly. I'm
yeah.
not saying that. Yeah, yeah. So as far as how they could have handled the character, I agree
Mhm.
that could have been different. But like narrative wise, I do believe there's a reason for it. But I do agree the execution could have been better. So I do understand what you mean by that.
Because like superheroes are normally like all very different, and for the most part, most superheroes use their actual real name and personality and their
Yeah.
superhero thing in a different way. Like Spider-Man, for example, he's a kid, so that
Hmm.
affects him being Spider-Man,
Hmm.
right? He's worried about school, he's worried about his arm, things like that, and that affects the way that he operates as Spider-Man. And he's a
Yeah.
journalist; he uses them. Batman, it's usually Bruce Wayne uses his connections and his money so that when he goes to be Batman, he can do it more effectively or he knows what to
Yeah.
do, right?
Hmm.
But then, like, this was just a Batman movie. There was no Bruce Wayne to it whatsoever.
Hmm.
And even I know it's meant to be like a detective story, and Batman's the detective, but like
Hmm.
how I think it would have been good if there was the odd case where he actually used the fact that he is Bruce Wayne a bit more to his advantage.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, understood for sure. Um, I'll say the action scenes I thought were pretty good. Like, I mean, there
Yeah.
was I liked the fact that they didn't, or at least in some of them, they didn't do like cutaways. It was just like straight one shot type of
Mm-hmm.
action scenes that like really show the impact. And I mean, he's really it's it's the classic thing of Batman doesn't kill anyone. No, 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 no,
No.
no. He'll make someone a quadriplegic for the rest of their life, but no, he won't kill them.
Yep.
He's just beating the shit
I
out of
did love
people.
how brutal some of it was. Like the
Yeah,
fight
like
scenes were great.
yeah.
Even that one where
So
he's
that
just walking down the hall and they're shooting him.
yeah.
Like the
That yeah.
cinematography on this movie is great.
Exactly. Yeah, they did a phenomenal job. Also, randomly, Nirvana started charting again because the song they put in the
Yeah.
movie, which I mean, great song. I mean, I've loved that album as I'm sure many other people have for a long time. But it's just it's so funny, and we're clearly getting to that age of like '90s music we would listen to is like charting again because younger kids are seeing it in movies again for the first or seeing it for the first time, and so like the song, what was it? Was it Yesterday or whatever the song was called? From the album Nevermind, and then
Mm.
it started charting again, which I thought was funny. So, yeah, I mean, overall, I'm trying to think if there's anything else from it that I can think of. Yeah, I think that's about it. But yeah, I mean, I would give it a thumbs up. I
Yeah.
enjoyed it. I don't know if I would say it's my favorite Batman movie by any means.
I still prefer the Nolan trilogy. I think there was
Mhm,
more a humanness to that as well. They were
mhm,
more enjoyable movies.
yeah.
This was good. I really enjoyed it. I don't think it's a movie I'm ever going to go back and watch. And you know what? If they said we're not going to make a sequel to it, I wouldn't even be
Mhm,
upset. I'd be like, oh, okay. That was a fun like little experiment.
mhm. Well, yeah, exactly. And actually, I know they were going to do the Penguin TV show, but I think that's been canceled now, if I'm not
No,
mistaken.
I think they've turned it into no. That it was gonna be a Gotham PD show, I think, and then I think they've turned it into a Penguin show.
I
It's
could have
something. It's
sworn I got.
something like that.
Yeah, something weird going on, but even still,
No,
it's
no, it's
more.
changed to an Arkham show.
Oh, okay,
That was what it was. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
okay, all right, that could be interesting. Actually, sorry, the other thing I was going to mention, I could. Did you play the Batman Telltale games? I think you
Yeah.
said you did. Yeah, there was actually a little bit of that in this too, with some of the story with the like background of the
Yeah.
family, which I thought was also interesting, and Arkham and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, I'm kind of the same way where I agree. Like it was nice to see. I'm glad I would say it's certainly better than the last couple of Batman, after the Nolan, but before this one with the other DC stuff. So I think they're doing a good job in that sense. But yeah, I'm kind of the same way where I don't really need another one. I mean, frankly, I think DC in general just needs to take a fucking break for the next decade, like,
Hmm.
and just reset for a lot of different reasons. But yeah, it was nice to see. Like I said, I would
I,
recommend
I
it. See it once.
I don't get the hype where people are making out like it's the best comic book movie ever and it changed my life and stuff. That was one of those things where I came out and I was like, it's like a
Yeah,
solid movie, but like this isn't gonna change the genre forever.
yeah, exactly. I mean, there are very much good aspects to it, but yeah, it was fine. I
Yeah.
enjoyed it. It was good.
Oh,
Yeah, it was thumbs up. All right, now what we've all been waiting for, clearly.
yep.
Norm Macdonald, nothing special. So Norm Macdonald, I actually really quick. I mean, I've watched Norm Macdonald over the years. I can't say I'm like a super fan by any means, or even a regular. It's not that I'm not a fan. It's just I haven't watched like all the specials. I mean, I watched him on Saturday Night Live and stuff. But I think you've told me you've watched more of his stuff, right?
Yeah, I love Norm Macdonald. I was actually
Okay.
I was once reading like a top stand ups of all time list or something.
Hmm.
I think he was number one.
Oh,
And
really?
I was like, what? Like I knew the guy because of his voice more than anything. Like
Right. Right.
we didn't get Saturday Night Live in the UK, right? So
Hmm.
a lot of the comedians from that we didn't really get introduced until they were on like movies and stuff like that.
Oh, okay.
You know, like your Ben Stillers and your Will Ferrells and stuff like
Was your first experience with Mike Myers' Wayne's World?
Yeah. Yeah, like that's it. Like Austin Powers, that sort of stuff is like where we kind of got in because we didn't have Saturday Night Live on, right?
Yeah.
So
that's funny.
We, I was like, what? So I like went on YouTube and like they had one of these specials on YouTube, and I watched it. It's one of the funniest things I'd ever seen. Which is, it was, I think it's just called Norm Macdonald Live or something. It was like some Comedy Central.
Okay.
Stand-up.
I know. Yeah, there's some of his other specials on Netflix as well. So the special that we're about to talk about in a second is Netflix, but I think there's a couple of his other specials on there, and I'm sure I could find other ones in other places.
Hitler's Dog, I think, is the one on Netflix, and he had a show as well, just called Norm Macdonald Has a Show.
Well, then I think you also told me, or is that what you're talking about? Like he had a kind of a podcast type thing on YouTube, or that's something separate?
So it was a YouTube like live show where he used to have comedians on, and it was just like I think it's because he never got the Late Show when Craig Ferguson left.
Oh,
he just started a Twitter campaign saying he wanted it.
Yeah,
and like no one was considering him because like
right
or whatever, and he was just like, I want to interview Kanye and stuff.
Why not?
Yeah, so he started that, and when he didn't get it, he just started doing this podcast, I think, and honestly, it's hilarious. He gets like old comedians on, like Jim Carrey, Jerry Seinfeld, and then it kind of spun off into the Netflix show.
Yeah, I need to go back and check that out. And I even remember back in the day, I would watch him on SNL. I mean, his most famous part was Weekend Update, when he would do, like the news, but like put his own funny take on it. And he was definitely one of the better ones who did that. But then he would like get in trouble sometimes with some of the shit he would say. Like it's funny. You could watch highlights about different things that he did. But yeah, in general, I mean, he's been around in movies and pop culture obviously for a long time. But so the special unfortunately was released basically the special starts off with the fact that he recorded this in the middle of 2020 in the pandemic, and he was about to go in for a surgery, and the night before he recorded all in one take a special, and it's literally like what we look like right now. He's literally even closer like this in front of a camera for like 50 minutes straight, and he like a dog is barking in the background, his phone is going off, and it's just like a stream of consciousness. Like I have to imagine he probably had plenty of stuff written down, but when you watch it, it's just like he's just talking like stream of consciousness basically the whole time.
Well, what's kind of funny is when he died, I was like kind of gutted because I could have seen him like the year before, but didn't because it was like a 2-hour drive, and I was like, I'll do it another time. And I really regret that. But I then, once he died, went on YouTube and was listening to like bootlegs of like his old stand-up, and he actually did this set a few times. And
okay.
So I had heard pretty much all of this material before. I don't know how it was for you, but the fact that there wasn't an audience made it not work as much for me.
Yeah, and also, sorry, just to clarify really quick. So even though this was recorded in 2020, that's not when he died. He didn't die until like last year or earlier this year, I think.
It was last year.
I can't remember. Sometime in the last year or so. Yeah, and so basically the special he pretty much told was like, if I die, release the special. So that's why it got released. If it wasn't for him dying, I guess he wouldn't have released this. But yeah, so as far as how it hit me, not having an audience, I mean, it's a little weird because you don't typically see that. But I guess for me, this material, it didn't work for me for the most part, and not because of the audience aspect, but like because to me what it looked like is he is just trying the material still. Like a lot of comics, like they try material for like dozens of shows, and then they'll do a recording of like when it's polished and nice. And like when I see this, I mean, there were some parts of course where I laughed too, like it wasn't all bad or anything, but it was just not polished. But like I don't think that's what he was going for either. So I don't know.
What's weird is because I've heard it with an audience, is you can still hear in his tone of voice where he knows the laughs are going to be. Okay, he's sort of like playing off it, even though there's no one there, which is a weird skill to have because he's done it in a thing, and he knows the parts people are going to laugh harder at because he
Yeah.
pauses. And then he'll say a line and people start chuckling, and he'll sort of be like, no, hear me out here, sort of thing,
Yeah. So
But
exactly.
he still does it even though there's not an audience there.
Right.
Right.
So it's like kind of awkward a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, but I also think that is such a strange talent, even a professional stand-up, to know how your jokes are going to land, where they're going to land, the big laughs and stuff like that.
Yeah, so I guess to that point, so this special, so the first part of it, like 15 minutes, whatever it is him, and he's speaking, and he's doing his thing. But there's actually a second part to the special of about 30 minutes where there's a discussion about Norm with like some of his closest friends. So like the people in the room are, let's see, David Letterman, Dave Chappelle, Molly Shannon, Adam Sandler, David Spade.
Yeah, Conan.
Conan. Sorry, yes, Conan was, and yeah, I think that's it. So, and they're all talking. I mean, they're a little bit talking about him as a, his life and all that sort of stuff, which is, we'll get to that in a second. But one of the things they kind of mentioned, and maybe it was Adam Sandler, he had said, like, he's probably one of the most intelligent people I've ever seen, and he could swap out like entire 2-hour sets on the fly, like, because he had so much material in his head. And so I will absolutely give him praise for that sense as well. So it seems like he clearly knew what he was doing, and he had an interesting skill set.
Well, I've seen him before, like, give Jim Carrey crap for like trying to be a serious actor. He's like, you're a stand-up comedian, do comedy.
Yeah.
Like, he always made fun of the fact that he was like, oh, what I used to hate about stand-up was they'd be like, you're good at this, why don't you write a sitcom? And he goes, because I'm a stand-up comedian, not a sitcom writer.
Right. Like, I mean, he knows his skills. Yeah.
He's like, you get a writer for that, like,
Right. Exactly. So clearly, like, for all of his material, very good commentator. He was able to dissect things, and like all the people talking about him were like, he was able to just have an interesting viewpoint on a lot of different things. So yeah, I mean, it was fun. I mean, regardless, it was still interesting to watch. I mean, I'm glad it was released, and it's by no means bad. Like, I'm not trying to give that impression. It's just, there's plenty of great Norm Macdonald specials you could watch, like when he's at his peak, and like it's incredible.
I would even say for this material, just listen to one of the bootlegs of the same show from just before he passed with the audience laughing. I think it really adds a lot more to it.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Just the playing off the crowd is part of the comedy, and it's not something I really realized until I watched this, because I love stand-up comedy.
Yeah.
I didn't realize how much the audience needed to be there.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I don't know if you remember this, but speaking of the pandemic again, one of the things that started happening, I think, towards the end of 2020 is there were a couple of comedians who wanted to start going on tour again, but obviously, like, they had to distance and all that sort of stuff. So there were some places that were hosting comedy or stand-up type of events at drive-in theaters, but everyone had to stay in their car. But then, like, the comedian was up front, and I forget who it was talking about this, but someone was saying, like, well, because you couldn't hear the laughter, to do the laughter, people were just honking their horns like at them, like talking. And it was like, it's not quite the same. I guess it kind of helped, but yeah, that's what stand-up is. You need that audience interaction, and that's where even a lot of comedians say they thrive on it. Like, you watch older, like Robin Williams or George Carlin or Richard Pryor, and like they are right there with the audience, and same thing with Norm Macdonald as well. So it's a different dynamic.
There's a story about Rodney Dangerfield. First movie he ever did was Caddyshack.
Yeah.
And apparently after the first day of filming, he went up to the director and he's like, if you want to get someone else for this role, like, I understand, like, I'm doing awful. And the guy's like, no, you're killing it. He goes, yeah, but no one's laughing. Like, he didn't understand. Like, he thought all the stuff, because most of that movie as well, he just turned up and like ad-libbed.
Right, exactly.
Like, he thought that like everyone hated the stuff he was coming up with because no one's laughing. They're like, no, we can't laugh, otherwise it's going to ruin the take.
You're going to fucking hear it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very different skill set, and yeah, it's weird to see sometimes. But yeah. So I mean, if you like stand up, I mean, if you like Norm Macdonald, you'll probably like watching this. But I mean, if you like stand up, it's still interesting to see. But as weird as it sounds, I actually like the tribute part at the end
Yeah.
more than like the special itself. But I think I'm glad they added that. I don't know if that was always in the cards to do that or not, but I'm glad they sort of had that discussion at the end.
Norm Macdonald was a weird comic because he was on all the time. Like
Hmm.
I've even listened to like interviews with him and stuff, and he'd go on radio shows and play a character.
Yeah, it just
Not
doesn't
like, oh,
stop.
this is my character as a French waiter, but like he himself. Like I listened to a 20-minute radio interview
Mhm.
where he talked about how he hasn't had sex in 10 years because he's like very Christian and he believes it'd be shameful and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
And they're trying to tell him how ridiculous it is, and he's like, no, like I'm a very strong Christian. Like
Mm.
he's like, I don't believe like sex makes me feel uncomfortable. I choose not to do it. And then
Sure.
like randomly later, like towards the end of the interview, they're like, "How's your son?" He's like, "Oh, he's great." And they're like, "How old is he?" And he's like, 6. And for 20 minutes, he's been telling them like,
Wait a
"Yeah,
minute. Something doesn't add up. That's funny. That's a good one. I like that.
yeah."
Yeah, yeah. I mean, he definitely plays it up, and like I think you can tell he's generally sincere, but like he knows how to play to an audience, and it's still fun to watch him when he does that stuff. Um, So yeah, I mean, watching that tribute, I mean, it was great to see all these people that clearly respected him and loved him and just talked about his life. And then, to be honest, they started talking about a couple things that I mean, I haven't looked into him that much, so I didn't really understand. Like, I guess he had a gambling addiction
Mhm.
apparently, and they sort of talked about that. But then, of course, in classic Norm Macdonald, like Adam Sandler was telling a fucking story about how I guess Norm won like $25,000 worth of like winnings at a casino, and then Adam Sandler was over and he opened his fridge and all the chips are uncashed like in his fridge,
Yeah,
and he was like, what are you doing? Why didn't you cash this in?" And he goes, "Well, because I got to pay taxes on it. I can't do that now." And then I guess like 2 days later he lost it all when he went
yeah.
back to the casino or something.
There's a story from one comedian who talks about how he won like $50,000 in a casino
Hmm.
once, and he was talking about how he wanted to stop gambling.
Hmm.
So he took the money onto a pier and threw it into the ocean. And they're like, "Why did you do that?" He said, "If I had it, I'd just gamble and lose it." And
Yeah.
he was like, "Okay."
All right. Cool. I mean, whatever helps, man.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I mean, yeah. If you like I said, if you like Norm Macdonald, or if you want to just see an interesting discussion at the end, I mean, yeah, I give it a thumbs up. I mean, I
I
enjoyed it.
I would even say if you're just interested in stand up and seeing how that process
Mm.
works, I would say watch
Yeah.
it.
Uh huh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's definitely worth it. I will say, I guess, unless there's anything else you wanted to mention about this one.
No?
I will say another thing I've been doing, or I've seen lately, I should say, is tributes. Not exactly to this, but like of other comedians who have passed and stuff, and it just sucks, like to see it because like the other one, I don't think I'm gonna do like a full review on this for for this show or anything. But the other one I also watched yesterday was on Netflix, Bob Saget tribute.
Hmm.
And that one was actually very. So it wasn't a stand up special. It was almost like a roast, to be honest, but
Yeah.
like a funny like funeral roast almost. Like it was kind of a little weird at first, but it was kind of the same thing. Of all of his loved ones came up and they talked about him, and they actually had some music there, like John Stamos from Full House. Like he actually is a musician, so he was playing, like John Mayer was playing music.
Hmm.
But then you had actually Jim Carrey and Chris Rock were there just talking about him, and all these other comedians came up. It was really nice too. It was just about his life because he tragically passed away also, a year or so ago or whenever it was. And it's like it's going to sound super morbid. Like I want to, like I was about to say, I want to see more of these, but like no, I don't want more comedians to die by any means.
Yeah.
But like for these prolific people, it is nice to see that there are these kind of ways to like honor them, and like Bob Saget was fucking incredible too. So it was just nice to see. So if you like just as weird as it sounds, if you like seeing this type of thing, I would recommend some of those types of specials.
Well, they actually both were really good friends because Bob Saget directed Norm Macdonald's movie,
Oh, okay, I didn't realize that.
Dirty Work, and Bob Saget had one of those Comedy Central roasts.
Oh, that's right. He
and
did.
He asked Norm Macdonald to take part, and the story like this came out afterwards that like Norm Macdonald didn't want to take part because he said, "I don't like making fun of my friends or being mean to my friends." Sorry,
Really?
and Bob Saget was like, "Well, I want you to do it. Like, you just got to do it. It'd be funny." And no one knew what was it. So apparently, like during the whole roast, Norm Macdonald was just reading a newspaper. While he's like reading the sports section, like while everyone's getting up, and then he came up and he did like jokes from a 1940s joke book. And it would be like, Bob, you've got a face like a flower, a cauliflower, and like no one's laughing, and he just keeps going, and then eventually people are just laughing because it's getting
What do you
so
do at that
absurd,
point?
and all the other comedians are like, "What are you doing?" Right? And he pretty much reads this like entire 1940s joke book, and Bob Saget came out afterwards, and he was like, "You saw like 3 minutes of that on air." He was like, "In the room, it went on for 20 minutes."
He just kept going.
He was like holding the room hostage with these awful jokes.
Oh my god! See, I love that. That's perfect.
Yeah,
That's so funny. Oh, actually, sorry. One other thing I just remembered. So, in a couple of weeks, I'll talk about the show that another show I've been watching, The Orville. So, science fiction, Star Trek like show. So it's on its third season now. But one of the things Seth MacFarlane did from the very first season, he actually had Norm Macdonald voice a character, and it's one of the side characters. He has a couple lines. He literally plays a green blob. It's like a slime blob. That's all he plays. But he does the voice, and when you hear it, you're like, oh, that's Norm Macdonald. So the third season was delayed because of COVID and all that stuff. But they've had their episodes done for a while now. And so when the first episode premiered this season, like about a month and a half ago, it opened with R.I.P. Norm Macdonald, and his character had a voice in that first episode. And I was like, oh, that's nice. Like, he clearly recorded it a while ago before he got sick. But what I didn't realize is he's actually in multiple episodes. Like, I just watched an episode yesterday, and he's in it again. And I was like, oh shit. So they actually, and there's a few more episodes left to the season. So they actually recorded his voice for like 4 or 5 episodes in the season, which I did not anticipate. Yeah. So it's actually been nice to see, like, hear his voice again on this show for like the last time. So
yeah,
it's been kind of nice. Yeah. So, anyways,
free thumbs up for free things.
Yeah, I would say so.
You
yes.
haven't played Final Fantasy 14 yet, so.
I mean, I'll trust you on that one. Yeah, I'm gonna play it next week. No, fuck, this game is terrible. It's the worst. But yeah, so anyways, for all those still watching here, if you've seen any of this stuff, or if you have other specials and comedians that you'd recommend to check out, definitely let us know. Yeah. If you've read Batman comics like I have, I'd actually like to know which other ones you have. I have, as many good ones as I have a couple stinkers as well. So believe me, there's plenty out there. I get it. But yeah, definitely let us know. Check us out here on Tojo Dojo, and follow us on Twitter as well. So until next time, we'll talk about more stuff. See you then.
Bye.